So, good evening, everyone. I'm Vishal Salsekar, and today we are going to take the news story discussion of 2nd July, right? So, in the today's discussion, we are going to discuss certain main news, which includes the cabinet's approval of certain schemes. The first is the cabinet's approval of the ELI scheme that we are going to discuss. The second important news that we are going to discuss is the research and development and innovation related scheme, right? Then the third article is about the national sports policy of 2025, that how the evolution has been done and what new has been brought in this policy. The next article that we are going to discuss is the 1 year completion of the three criminal laws. So there was three criminal laws that have been brought down and now there have been 1 year completion. So we will see how the assessment of these particular laws are there. And then last article in the main series is the 50 years completion of the sites. Right. Then there is a places in news also where we will talk about Thailand. And apart from that, there are certain quick updates that we are going to discuss. Right. So let's start the discussion of the first main news, which is the cabinet approves the employment linked incentive scheme. So basically, what is the employment linked incentive? So whenever there are certain kind of employments that are getting generated in an economy, there are certain incentives are being provided. Now the incentive can be provided to the employee also, and incentive can be provided to the employer also. To the employee, if the employee is getting registered with certain specific organization, for example, in this particular case, EPFO, and there is also a salary related aspects that up to 1 lakh rupee. So basically in that particular case, the employee is going to get certain monetary incentive, and as well as whenever the employer is employing additional employees. So apart from their existing employee set, if they are employing some new employees, in that particular case also the incentives are being provided. So basically this is the general meaning of the employment linked incentive, that you are getting certain kind of incentives, right? So now what is basically brought down by the government in the budget of 2024-25. So in the budget of 2024-25, the Prime Minister's package of the 5 scheme was brought down. Now, what is it related to? It was related to the employment and skilling related aspects. So basically, in order to improve the employment related scenario, as far as India is concerned, this particular schemes or the package of 5 schemes was brought down in the last year's budget, which was 2024-25. Now, in order to enact that particular provision of the budget, there is now cabinet's approval to the employment linked incentive scheme. Whenever there is any kind of scheme that is there in news, the first and the most important thing that you should be concerned about is the ministry who is laying out this particular scheme. So in this case, it is the Ministry of Labor and Employment. Now, next aspect is the total outlay. So basically, though UPSC does not go into that much trivial facts, but since it is a major aspect, because 1 lakh crore is being spent on this employment linked scheme for this 2 years from 2025 to 27. So you can assume that this is the magnitude or the gravity because of which the UPSC may ask one such statement like this, right? Now, with respect to the ministry, one such thing I want to tell you, that UPSC can frame a question like the ELI scheme recently approved by government or let's say cabinet is related to which particular ministry. So in that particular case, they can ask the ministry. So with respect to schemes, you have to have an awareness about the ministry. Then next is the objective of this particular scheme. Now, when we talk about the objective of this scheme, by the name itself, it is very clear that this particular scheme is going to improve the job or the employment related scenario as far as the India is concerned. So what it is doing, if it is providing incentives to the employee as well as to the employers, in that particular case, they are going more for the formalization. So don't you think so? It is also going to improve the formal economy related aspects. So the formalization of economy will also be such outproduct of this. Then the social security benefits, because if you are going to get registered with certain formal organization which is going to provide you certain kind of social security benefit, then in that particular case, this scheme is also focusing upon the social security benefits across the sector. Though some specific incentives are provided to certain sectors, let's say manufacturing, but it is applicable for all the sectors. Now, lastly, with respect to this, that there will be generation creation of a lot of employment. So as per the government's data, more than 3.5 crore jobs that are going to be generated with respect to this scheme. Now, when we talk about the scheme, if that is an important scheme, then in that particular case, the structures is also sometimes very, very important. So this particular scheme has two structural aspects. First is the Part A, where the incentives are being provided to the first time employee, right? That means previously that particular employee was not associated with that EPFO registration. मतलब उसका registration नहीं था with respect to EPFO. He is for the first time taking part in the formal economic structure. So basically what you are doing, you are providing certain kind of incentives to that particular employee. So there is a cap of the salary that roughly 1 lakh, up to 1 lakh if you are earning, then in that particular case, you can register with EPFO and you can get the benefit. Now what will be the benefit? So the benefit will be up to 1 month ka EPF wage. Basically 1 month salary ke around, but not till your all salary. It is capped to 15,000 rupees. So up to 15,000 you can get the 1 month EPFO ka jo contribution hai, that particular contribution will be provided to you as a reimbursement, right? So now how that reimbursement or that particular amount will be available to you? So this is available in 2 installment. One will be available when you will be continuing your whatever job or service here that you are doing for 6 months. If there is a continuity for 6 months, you will be getting the first installment. The next installment will be coming further after 6 months. That means 12 months from the joining. If you are continuing for that particular period, then you are going to get the second installment. That means it's not like ki maximum 15,000 you are going to get on the 6 month or day one itself. It will be available in a span of 12 months. Now, in order to promote the savings or the thrift related aspects as far as the employee is concerned, there are certain saving provision. That means they are not going to give you the all money. There will be certain portion of that particular amount that you are going to get will be put in the savings related account, and that money will be available after certain period of time. That means they are also promoting certain savings related aspects. Apart from that, this is the magnitude that it is going to impact, that roughly 1.92 crore first time employee are going to take the benefit of this particular scheme, right? Now, how the amount is going to get? Basically, there will be direct benefit transfer through the Aadhaar bridge payment system. ठीक है? So basically, Aadhaar based payment जो होता है in the form of DBT that you are going to get. So the money is directly coming to your account after the stipulated amount of time. Now the second part or the part B is for the incentive to the employer. Now how the employers are going to get? So if employers are getting new employees for further services, let's say if the workforce for that particular employer is less than 50, in that case at least 2 additional employees, and if it is more than 50, then at least 5 additional employees. So per additional employee, if they are meeting this particular criteria, they are going to get up to 3,000 per month for the 2-year duration. That means this particular amount will be available to the employer, not to employee. For employee, it was in this case. It will be available to the employer. Now, how much amount? 3,000 per month for per employee, right? So, it will be available for 2 years. But for improving the scenario, as far as the manufacturing is concerned, 2-year additional are also provided to the manufacturing sector. So, for manufacturing, it is total 4 years. So, 6 months of sustained employment. Like this, the condition was that first installment will be available after 6 months of the continuous working, and then after that, 12 months के बाद the second installment will be available. Here, minimum 6 months of sustained employment have to be provided by that particular employer. Why this kind of provisions are added? In order to not exploit the amount wala thing कि भाई you have employed and you have removed the employee, right? So that's why 6 months of sustained employment is being provided. Here also, again, the additional jobs that are going to get, because what you are doing, you are promoting or you are going to get the additional employee. So 2.6 crore additional jobs are tentatively going to add in the economy. Now, in this case, who is going to get the benefit or the money? It is to the employer. So they will be directly getting in their PAN-linked bank account. They are going to get the money, which will be as calculated by the 3,000 per month for per employee basis, right? Now, with respect to this particular scheme, this much was the aspect that we had to talk about. Now, the second article that we had to talk about is the Union Cabinet's approval of the Research Development and Innovation Scheme. So as yesterday was the 1st July, there were a lot of cabinet decisions were approved. One such prominent decision was the approval for the research development and innovation scheme. Now, basically we know that, as highlighted by even the economic survey, that our contribution as a percentage of GDP as far as the research development and innovation is concerned is not that promising. Roughly 0.7% of the GDP is the contribution that is available for the research, innovation, and new technology related aspects. So this is comparatively lesser. Now, in order to boost that particular thing, there is also need to encourage the private investment in those things. But if there is no that much confidence from the private sector, then that investment is comparatively difficult to get. So in order to support them, the government has come up with the research development and innovation scheme. Now, as you can see over here, this is a kind of structure that we are going to discuss in the article. So there will be Government of India who is going to give the funds to a special purpose fund created for this particular purpose, right? Then this particular fund will be distributing the fund to the second layer, which is the fund managers. Let's say there are different special purpose vehicles, there are certain kind of other financial institutes, there are DFIs, there are NBFCs. So to them, they are going to give the fund. So basically what it is doing, from Government of India to a layer which is the special fund, to the fund managers, and then to the industrial sector which is working upon the innovation. So that means the fund availability is going to be very good as far as the improvement that can be concerned with respect to the research and development scheme. So let's discuss about this particular scheme. So what are the highlights? So when we talk about the highlights, what is the aim of this particular scheme? As already talked about, that it is going to talk about the long-term financing or refinancing. That means you are going to get the loan, or if you have already taken the loan, there will be further top-up that is going to be provided. Now at what cost? It will be at low or very nil interest rate, because government wants to promote this particular manufacturing and other critical technology related aspects, right? So outlay kya hai iska? Again, as discussed in the last scheme also, the fund is not that important, the amount of fund, but roughly 1 lakh crore is also the outlay for this particular scheme. Now what is the objective? So as we had discussed from that particular flow chart, first it is going to encourage the private sectors or private sector investment in the sunrise sector. What is sunrise sector? So sunrise sector is basically that particular sector where there is a lot of development potential. For example, critical energies. For example, renewable energies. For example, there are different kind of critical minerals, or let's say certain kind of niche technologies. So these particular things are concerned as the, or can be considered as a sunrise sector, which have a lot of developmental potential for the future. They are going to give a lot of extra to the economy, right? Then financing the transformative projects. So transformative project, basically those particular projects which are roughly at the maturity stage. Matlab, we know that these particular projects can give certain dividend if provided with a constant availability of the adequate amount of fund. So basically for financing that particular transformative project, the funds will be available from this particular fund. Right. Next is about supporting the acquisition of technology. Now, basically technology, if there is certain kind of partnership with different countries, obviously there will be a cost involved in order to procuring that particular technology. So in that case, also the funds are going to be provided. Last but not the least is facilitating the setting up of a deep tech fund of fund. That means there is a fund, a specific fund that is going to be created in order to fund these particular critical sectors. So there is a fund of fund is being provided in this. Now there is a two-tier funding mechanism. Briefly we had discussed. Now let's further discuss about this. So there is a Government of India at the apex. Government of India is going to give the fund to this particular special purpose fund, or let's say for this particular case, it is assume it as a kind of like major bank. It is not a bank, but this is a kind of special purpose fund created for this case. Now there will be funds coming from the Government of India. Now this particular fund is being created under Anusandhan National Research Foundation, which was created under Anusandhan National Research Foundation Related Act that was brought down in 2023. Purpose kya tha iska? In order to provide seed funding, in order to provide a lot of capital to the startup, to different kind of technological ventures, right? In order to ensure that they should not be lacking the fund availability. Once the fund is coming in this particular special purpose fund vehicle, right? After this, there will be disbursement to the second level fund manager. Now, at the second level fund manager, you can assume the distributaries. So basically, in that particular case, there may be a special purpose vehicle that can be created. There are certain kind of financial institutions. There may be NBFCs. There are developmental financial institutions. So there may be different distributors of that particular fund. Again, why they are distributing? Because in order to support the development of the critical or the niche technologies that we need right now. Right. So what are the other details? Basically, who is managing this particular fund or under whose strategic direction this particular fund is there? So basically, the strategic directions are being provided by the governing board of this particular Anusandhan National Research Fund, which is chaired by the Prime Minister. So this particular governing board is chaired by Prime Minister. There can be a probable question in the UPSC prelims giving a statement that this particular governing board is being chaired by, let's say they might be saying ki Finance Minister. So the correct answer will be the Prime Minister in this case. The nodal department which is related to this is the Department of Science and Technology. Again, as I told you in the first article, that you should be having an idea and awareness about the ministry or the department, right? Now, how this particular scheme or this research innovation fund is going to help? Basically, when the fund availability is comparatively eased, don't you think so there will be participation from different sectors of society, be it the private sector, be it certain kind of like PPP, or let's say some special purpose vehicle, right? Basically, this will be ensuring that there will be no fund constraint in order to ensure proper and solid research for the development of technologies. Next is about the technological adoption. So basically, in that particular case, it is going to ensure that there will be niche or the critical technologies that are available. So fund constraint should not hinder the availability of the technologies. And when the technologies are available, when you are having the cutting edge technology, you are going to get the competitive edge at the global level, right? Next is the growth capital. So basically, in order to provide certain kind of seed funding, certain kind of financial outlays, this particular scheme is going to provide. Ultimately, all these kind of things in totality are going to ensure the objective which is being brought by the Prime Minister in order to ensure the Viksit Bharat by 2047. So these particular agendas are going to ensure that we are going to get the Viksit Bharat by 2047. Next important article that we have to discuss about the National Sports Policy 2025. Again, a cabinet approval. So there have been approval for this particular National Sports Policy of 2025. Now the question comes, and even UPSC can ask, is it for the first time the government has brought the National Sports Policy, or do we have any kind of policy even before this particular? So before this, there was policy of 2001 also, and even before that, there was policy in 1984. So we have the National Sports Policy from 1984. There have been an evolution of the sports related policy over a period of time, because considering the time, space, and also a lot of demand from the sports sector, there have to be changes brought in this particular policy. So what are the changes that are being brought and special feature of this particular policy? Let's discuss. The first important feature of this policy is ensuring the excellence at the global stage. Now, whenever you are going to talk about the global stage, or let's say the international competition, let's say the Olympics, Asian Games, or let's say the Commonwealth Games, basically, in order to ensure the good performance, you should be having the proper facilities, you should be having the good instructors, you should be having the competitive edge, you should be having all the other kind of facilities available, like let's say the kind of the sports persons meet, right? So that you will be able to get a lot of idea about how they are getting trained. So basically, in order to ensure excellence at the global stage, from the very beginning level, while nurturing the talent and to getting the medal, all these kind of things are being ensured as a part of the excellence at the global stage. What you are going to do, you are going to promote a lot of competitive leagues. Let's say, for example, IPL is there for cricket. So similarly, different kind of leagues are going to be promoted for different kind of sports. And what they are going to do, they are going to popularize that particular sports, right? Next is about the economic development. Now, don't you think so sports can be a kind of venture also? Let's say there is IPL that is being hosted for cricket right now. So that is also attracting a lot of global tourists. So there is a economy that is centered around these kind of leagues. So if there is a sports policy that is talking about the economic development, this particular aspect can also be think of, right? That is going to generate a lot of startup as far as the sports is concerned. Maybe the equipments, maybe the technological developments, maybe the development of the data gathering wala thing, artificial intelligence, big data analytics, all these kind of things can promote the economic development also. Next important aspect is the social development. Now, don't you think so that the sports is one such thing which is uniting across the globe? Whenever the teams are participating in any specific game, there is competitive spirit. But at the same time, people are meeting, people are gathering, people are talking about different things, and that is ensuring the social development. Apart from that, if we talk about India, whether it is the child, whether there are vulnerable section, whether we talk about women, all of them can get uplifted and people can think about that they can pursue the sports as a profession also. So this is going to ensure the social development also. Right? So this will bridge the caste divide. This will bridge the religion divide, right? Whenever in a same team, different players from different castes, different religions are playing, don't you think so it is going to create an impact? Next is about sports as a people's movement. Right now, we are talking about a lot of things with respect to the fitness. You might be seeing a lot of videos. The Prime Minister himself is talking about the fitness related aspects. And in order to ensure the Viksit Bharat, we have to also ensure that the youth remain fit, right? So the kind of issues like obesity, the kind of issues like the cardiovascular diseases, all these kind of things, if the sports is nurtured, if it is made as a people's movement, then in that particular case, we can have the better demographic dividend. So sports as a people's movement is also an aspect of this. Then integration with the National Education Policy 2020. Basically, when we are talking about the National Education Policy, a kind of controversy which is going on with respect to the language related thing. But apart from that, what curriculum has been decided, the sports is also an integral part of this. So basically, when we talk about the education policy, there is integration of sports. There will be training to the teachers who are involved in the sports, then incorporation of the spirit of sports from the very beginning in the child in order to nurture the good athletes and the sportsmen, right? Lastly, with respect to the strategic framework. So in order to achieve these particular objectives, there have been a strategic framework that have been adopted as per this particular policy. Now, what is the strategic framework we are going to talk about? First, it is ensuring the robust governance as far as the sports is concerned. So there is a need for a lot of regulations with respect to certain sports. Sometimes legislations are also needed, like there must be changes which are needed based upon the need of the time. So these particular things are going to be incorporated as a part of this policy. Then the private sector funding, we have talked about the economic dimension. So when there will be promotion of sports, obviously there will be incorporation of the private sectors. There will be PPP, there will be some kind of corporate social responsibility that can also become part of it, because all these kind of things are going to ensure the development of the human resources. That is also one such task. Then leveraging the emerging technologies, let's say the artificial intelligence, big data analytics, how they are useful. There can be stats, there can be trends, there can be certain kind of data that can be analyzed, and based upon that, we can take the informed decision, whether it is about sending someone to play certain international sports or providing certain kind of reskilling or retraining for that particular sport. Next is about national level monitoring framework. Basically, this is also going to provide a national level monitoring framework in order to monitor the development as far as the sports is concerned. Lastly is the model policy. Since the sports comes as a part of the state list of the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution, this particular policy which government has brought can become a model policy for the state, because based upon this particular policy, now state can adopt their specific acts or specific regulations of the sports. So basically, this can become the model policy. Now, with respect to India and sports, there are certain important pointers that can be useful for you from the examination perspective. First, we have discussed about that state subject hai sports. So basically, sports comes as a state subject. So as far as the constitutional provisions are concerned, it is part of the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution as a state subject. Right? Then, which ministry is concerned? It is the Ministry of Youth Affairs and the Sports. So there are two wings, which is one is the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. They are concerning about the sports and the development with respect to sports and specifically focusing on the youth. Now there is a SAI, which is the Sports Authority of India, is the nodal agency for the regulation of sports. Right? It is a society which is registered under the Societies Act. Now, there are certain schemes that were also brought out by the government in order to promote the development of sports, in order to attract the youth in the sports. So, the schemes like TOPS, which is the Target Olympic Podium Scheme, which is basically a scheme which is talking about the outcome based aspects. ठीक है, कौन से पोटेंशियल कैंडिडेट्स हैं और दोज पोटेंशियल एथलीट्स दोज हु कैन ब्रिंग द मेडल. देन देयर इज द खेलो इंडिया which is promoting youth to adopt the sport. Then Fit India movement. All these kind of things are going to talk about. Now basically broad aspect, if we talk about this particular policy, kahin na kahin ek important aspect hai that we want to get comparatively more medals as far as the Olympic is concerned. So we are talking about and we are targeting roughly 2036 ka Olympics. So this is the kind of vision that the government is coming up, that we are not going just for the short term goal. We are going for a long term goal which may be changing the, or which may become the paradigm shift as far as the sports governance in India is concerned. And why we have to have an awareness about this thing. Last year there were a lot of controversies associated with the sports and the sports governance, and in this particular case the sports policy can be a welcoming step, and then there can be reforms that can be done. Now, what are the significances of the national sports policy? So the first significance is when we are going to talk about the sports, let's say cricket, where India is comparatively a lot competitive, right? So this is going to create India's soft power. Whenever the Prime Minister of India and Australia are meeting, they are talking about the cricket. Whenever the Prime Minister of India and New Zealand are meeting, they are also talking about the cricket, or let's say the foreign minister. So basically what it is doing, it is ensuring that at the policy formulation level, there will be consideration of state also. And that is going to give a soft power boost. There will be the diaspora connect with respect to the sports, right? Then establishing India as a global sporting powerhouse. Right now with certain sports, yes we do, but with certain other sports, and as far as the major aspect with respect to Olympics is concerned, we are somewhat lagging. And the countries like China have significantly improved. So what we want to do, we want to ensure that we should also come at that particular par, right? So 2036 Olympics, which we are targeting. Now reaping the country's favorable demographic dividend. So as we are having the demographic dividend, which is in our favor roughly till 2050, so we want to reap that particular thing, and we want to ensure that this particular demographic dividend is going to give us the dividend in the form of Vikasit Bharat, which is the target, right? So this was about the sports policy. Next important article which we have to discuss is the 1 year of the new criminal laws, which came into force on 1st July 2024. So there has been 1 year appraisal of this particular the criminal laws related aspects, right? So there were 3 laws which got changed on 1st July 2024. So it was Indian Penal Code, which was the Penal Code of 1860. So it was a colonial era ka penal code which was changed by Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita or BNS of 2023. Then there is the Criminal Procedure Code CRPC of 1973, which was changed to Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Samhita. And then third is the Indian Evidence Act, which is basically dealing with the evidences. So basically Bharatiya Sakshi Adhiniyam. Saksh is basically used for the evidences. So these 3 laws that were brought down. Now what changes these particular laws have brought? Let's discuss those particular changes. The first important change, there were many changes, right? But we are discussing only the major ones over here. The first change is the FIR registration at the any police station. So basically previously what used to be done, wherever the jurisdiction of that particular crime lies, the FIR had to be registered in that particular jurisdiction, or any thana in that jurisdiction, right? Now the FIR can be registered from anywhere. Now this ensured that the rapid registration of the FIRs, or certain kind of things which previously used to manipulate the filing of the FIR, now that can be done even before the manipulation. Even there have been the technological incorporation or filing of e-FIR that have been significantly improved. So more than 2 lakh FIR have been filed over a period of last year with respect to this kind of changes. Next important thing, that is the death sentences for certain kind of offense which are the heinous crimes against the women and the children. So basically we are seeing a lot of instances where the kind of harassment or basically the sexual assault that is being done even with women, even with children, right? So in that particular context, this is going to provide the death sentence wala thing with respect to those kind of heinous crimes. Now what it is going to do, it is going to create certain kind of deterrence. The third important aspect is incorporation of the new offense. Now see, the IPC was of 1860. So roughly more than 160, 170 years have already been passed. Now when this much time have been passed, there have been the changes in the form of the kind of crimes that are being committed. New crimes have also been incorporated or evolved over a period of time. Cyber crimes are there. So basically in order to incorporate that particular thing, these particular things are incorporated in the recent penal codes, basically the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. Now, there are some specific inclusion which previously used not to be there. There have been incorporation of, let's say, the section 111 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, which talks about the organized crime, or let's say the section 113, which is talking about the terrorist related acts, right? The cyber crime has also been specifically talked about in this particular Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, right? So there have been incorporation of the new offenses, which after the evolution of technology or by the facilitation of technology have become more prominent. Lastly, in this particular case is the mob lynching, snatching. So these kind of instances have also been increased over a period of time. And these are also comparatively evolved wala thing, right? So basically there used to be law and order issues, but these are certain kind of specific hatred created against certain communities. So those particular things are also being incorporated now as a part of the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita and these three laws, right? Now, when we talk about the reforms, what are the specific things that have been incorporated and what is the progress status? Now, see, generally, whenever there have been substantial amount of time have been passed with respect to any policy, the UPSC can ask the question about what is the appraisal of that policy, what have been done further, and what are the lacunas, right? So, with respect to appraisal, first is the technology-driven aspect. So, basically, when we are talking about the technology-driven aspects, so whether it is about filing of EFIR or basically E-Sakshya, which is basically talking about giving certain kind of evidences that investigating officers or IOs can get the evidences. They can capture those particular things in the form of photos and videos in their own electronic devices, which is available with them, right? E-summons are there that have been implemented by 11 states, implemented or notified by 11 states. Next is the Nyaya Shruti, right? Basically the kind of online hearing that is available. So it is also available in the 6 states or UTs. So there have been improvement, right? You can see that 6 states is comparatively less, but yes, the states are also incorporating these things, right? Then crime and criminal tracking network and system, basically CCTNS, which is basically being utilized by the police, even the courts, in order to identify the criminals and also having the database of the criminals as far as the Indian database is concerned, right? So in that particular context also, there have been more than 10,000 police station and also the courts have been incorporated and integrated in this particular system. Then the capacity building and training, since the laws are new, since they have been changed, there have been the provisional change also. So basically there have been the incorporation of the capacity building. So that is being done in the 23 states and UTs in order to make sure awareness even at the Thana level regarding those provisions. Then the community service. So for certain kind of criminal offenses, the kind of punishment that is being provided. So community service can also be one such form of punishment. So you have done something, so there have to be certain kind of community service now you have to perform. So 12 states and UTs have basically enabled that particular things. And apart from this, the main objective of this particular criminal law was to simplify the provision so that the layman should be able to understand that why he or she is getting prosecuted, right? So simplification and clarity of law and even incorporation of certain changes that was the need of the time, right? So all these things were incorporated. Now talking about the challenges, we have seen the appraisal. Now we have to talk about the challenges also. The first and foremost challenge is the inadequate digital infrastructure or the availability of digital infrastructure. So there are many remote locations where at Thana level or at the district court level, there is no such availability of the internet or let's say the technological aspects or the electronic devices, right? So basically that poses the challenge as far as this electronic related aspects or the digital aspects as far as these three laws are concerned. So there is inadequate digital infrastructure pertaining at certain places. Then the timelines, though the timelines have been provided, but the resources are still in the constraints. So there have been 22% vacancies as far as the police is concerned, district judiciary is concerned. So initial filing of the cases, initial investigation, initial justice delivery will be done by whom? The police and the district judiciary, right? So in that particular case, if there are a lot of vacancies, don't you think so it is going to hamper any such initiative that is being done to promote certain kind of inclusive justice delivery? Then the weak forensic capacity. So there are certain times when there is a need for the forensic related aspects that are also needed in order to prove some things, right? So in that particular context, 47% administrative staff as well as 49% scientific. Matlab those who are administrating these particular aspects and those who are actually performing those forensic related things, there are lacks, right? Basically the workforce or the human resources are lacking. Then basically when you are talking about simplification of laws, what you are doing, there have been incorporation of for similar kind of thing without even explaining meaning to similarly appearing different terms for use. For example, there are provisions like there are digital records mentioned in one section, in the other section it is mentioned as the electronic record. Now what is the difference between the word digital and the electronic? That is not mentioned specifically, so that is subjected to the interpretation by the authorities. So there can be misutilization also, right? Then the community service, we have talked about that 12 states have notified and utilizing the community services. They have provision for that now, but there are a lot of states जहां पर इसके लिए provision नहीं है. तो basically that particular thing makes the provision with respect to community service ambiguous, right? So these are the challenges. So with this particular pointers, you can make a critical analysis based question upon the 3 criminal laws that have been changed last year, right? Now, there are certain Supreme Court judgments that are being talked about in this particular article. So first is with respect to the inhumane conditions in 1382 prison versus the Director General of Prison. So there is a section of this particular section, which is 479 of BNSS, which is dealing with the under trial people who are in the detention. They are in under trial, their trial is going on, they are not still convicted and they have faced a certain punishment ka time duration, right? So in this particular case, what happened, that the retrospective availability of this particular section was applied on the under trial people. So basically what court said, ki there will be retrospective availability of this section of BNSS, which will be there on the under trial people. That means if they have served the condition ke basis pe utna amount of duration, if they have served as an under trial person, there can be bail that can be granted to them, right? With respect to the inhumane conditions in the prison, there are jail authorities for the specific people, let's say the women, and even for certain other special cases, there has been incorporation of this particular section 479. So this section 479 as per the court has been interpreted in the retrospective manner. So this is one such important observation from the court. Then there is Badshah Majid Malik versus the Directorate of Enforcement case. So in that particular case also, the court had highlighted that they are providing the bail on the PMLA wala case, which is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, as the accused have served 1/3 of the maximum sentences. So now this particular person has served the 1/3 of the actual sentence that can be provided. So there can be bail that can be granted to that person, right? So basically the courts are interpreting these particular sections, and certain sections are even applicable in the retrospective manner. Means right now from 1st July 2024, this particular laws are applicable. So even before that, if there were certain kind of people who are under trial, un pe bhi apply ho raha hai. That means the retrospective application, right? Last in the main news is the 50 years completion of the Convention on the International Trade of the Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna. So CITES, which has completed the 50 years. Few days back, we had discussed about the emergency, 1975. Similarly, 1975 May, this particular CITES that actually came to picture. So whenever any specific organization, any specific event is completing significant years, so that particular year, man, the questions can be probable on that specific topic, right? Now, what is this particular CITES, which is the Convention on International Trade of Wild flora and fauna. Basically, there is international trade going on for different kind of species. So that particular trade should not become a kind of or a source of endangerment of those particular species. It can be flora also, it can be fauna also. Let's say the species like tiger, let's say the species like, let's say, elephant. Basically, if there is a trade going on for these particular species, that can make their availability in danger. So in that particular case, what CITES is doing, CITES is providing the framework that there are three different appendix where the species are being categorized, right? We will discuss about that. But let's first discuss about the evolution of CITES. So 1963 mein, there was the IUCN ka resolution through which the conceptualization of CITES was done. And actually in 1975, it came into force. Now, CITES is a voluntary agreement, means the countries or the regional organizations can join this particular agreement. But once you are joining this agreement, then whatever things that are being done by the CITES का COP, मतलब कुछ ऐसे important चीजें जो निकल कर आती है, they are binding on the member countries, right? But the CITES is not making any specific law. The things that are being mentioned, let's say the tiger prevention or let's say the elephant prevention. Now, CITES will not make the law. What CITES will do? CITES will guide the countries, and countries should incorporate their own law on those particular things. So CITES does not dictate you exactly कि ये law implement करो, but CITES tell you कि this is the area where you should need the law, and then the country itself is making the law on that particular thing. So these kind of recommendations are binding. Now the secretariat के बारे में if we talk about, so the secretariat is in UNEP, which is in the Geneva, Switzerland, right? And for the scientific and the technical services or the technical assistance, IUCN is the body which is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. You might have heard of the species related red data list, right? Where the species are being categorized in different categories. So that is being done by IUCN, which is an intergovernmental organization where the government and different other bodies, even non-governmental organizations, are part of it. Now the state parties, roughly 185, but no need to remember exact number, right? The countries or the regional organization. Implementation कैसे होता है? Through the domestic laws, means CITES guide the countries and countries bring their own domestic laws. Now there is a conference of party. For different conventions, there are different conference of party. What is this conference of party? The leaders of the countries or the designated member of those particular countries meet at some place, and then they decides the guideline, they decides the provision. So with respect to CITES, there have been the COP which are being done roughly in 2 to 3 years. ठीक है, तो ऐसा कोई fix नहीं है कि every year they are meeting. Now the CITES appendix, which we have to talk about. So it is dividing the species into 3 prominent categories. First category is which are in the threatened category of the extinction. Matlab, if the trade is continued for those particular species, in that case, there will be extinction of those species. And trade is generally banned for those species. In exceptional cases only, there may be permission for the trade. Okay. So this is the appendix 1. So the prominent species that you can recall of, they are generally categorized in the appendix 1, which are granted with the highest protection. Now with the appendix 2, the species right now are not in endangered status, matlab not IUCN wala, it is basically as per the CITES ka criteria, they are not necessarily threatened. But if the continuing of the trade is going on, that may lead to the threatening of their existence. Matlab, right now they are not threatened, but if the trade or the unsustainable trade is going on, then in that particular case, their existence can be in threat, right? So basically, there will be regulation. So how that regulation is being done? So there is a license system that is being utilized by the CITES. Then the appendix 3, where the species which is basically protected in one such member countries, so that member country can provide an idea to CITES that yes, this is a species which is in threatened category in my country, and in that particular case, CITES can guide other countries also in order to provide the control of that particular trade, or in order to assure or promote the control of the trade of that particular species. What it will be doing? It will be preventing any unnecessarily exploitation of those particular species, right? And it is applicable to both flora as well as for the fauna, right? Now, what are the key initiatives? So what kind of steps were taken by CITES? For example, there were the protection of the more than 40,000 species that you can talk about, right? There is MIKE program, which is the monitoring of the illegal killing of animals, right? So this particular program is also being brought by CITES only. Then there is International Consortium on combating the wildlife crime. where basically whatever wildlife crime that are there are different organizations, regional organizations, so through which sites is collaborating, and then they are preventing any such kind of crimes. Then sites tree species project. So these are also the project where with respect to the wildlife along with the fauna also they are flora and fauna they are talking about. So this is talking about the holistic aspects with respect to sites. Now the place in news. So the place in news for today is Thailand, right? So what happened actually, that the Thailand Constitutional Court, like the apex court in the Thailand, have suspended the prime minister for the ethical violation case. There were certain kind of violations that were done by the prime minister in leaking certain information. We need not to have an awareness about what exactly had happened, but there have been suspension of the Thailand's prime minister. So basically that particular region is now there in news. Now with respect to Thailand, you can see the geography, that which particular countries it is bordering with. So on the northern side or the northwestern side, it is the Myanmar. On the eastern side or the northeastern side, it is the Laos. Then there is Cambodia also in roughly southern side. Then there is Gulf of Thailand. Okay. And then in deep south, you can see the country Malaysia. So here it is Andaman Sea, it is the Gulf of Thailand. So basically this particular isthmus that you can see is the isthmus of Kara. So you might have heard of one project where the China wants to come over this Malacca dilemma. मतलब China को issue क्या है? What China is thinking that if the countries which are here or any major regional country like India, if they stop or prevent this particular region for the open sea line of communication, in that case how the Chinese product will reach to different market, or jo energy products those are coming from different countries, they are also coming through this particular route, right? So basically this is the Malacca dilemma of China. So what China want to do, China want to cut this particular region, this isthmus of Kara, in order to ensure a navigable canal. Now right now this is not implemented, तो अभी important नहीं है, but yes, this is the potential issue with respect to this. Now, when we talk about the Thailand, with respect to India, why it is important? You might have heard of BIMSTEC. UPSC had even asked question this year about BIMSTEC, right? So BIMSTEC ka member hai, or the founding member is Thailand, right? So India is also a member. So when India ka Act East policy we are talking about, so Thailand becomes a very important member country. Though it is not directly bordering with India, but yes, it is a major member of BIMSTEC through which India can pursue its Act East policy. Apart from that, there is India, Myanmar, Thailand Trilateral Highway, IMT Trilateral Highway, which is connecting from More to Mysore region, right, in the Thailand, which is talking about the connectivity or seamless connectivity in order to ensure the regional cooperation. Apart from that, there is Mekong River, which is basically originating in the China region. Then it is making the border with China and Myanmar and also flowing through Thailand. It is making the border between Thailand and Laos. Another important aspect with respect to this is the Golden Triangle. You might have heard of Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle. Golden Crescent is basically India, Pakistan, Iran, Pakistan and Afghanistan region, right? So it is made in the form of a crescent, which is basically the illegal opium production and the trade related zone. So basically whatever trade is going on, that is going on in an illegal manner. And what this is doing, this is funding the terrorist activity. So Iran, Pakistan and Afghanistan are the countries which are part of Golden Crescent. On the other end, Golden Triangle, which is basically related to the Southeast Asian countries, which includes the country like Myanmar, Laos and Thailand, which are the countries making the Golden Triangle. India consider it as a death triangle, right? India ne naam diya hai ise death triangle. So whenever we talk about the internal security issue, whenever drug trade related issues are there, so this is the region from which the infiltration of drugs are being done on the eastern border, right? So there is a Golden Crescent, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Golden Triangle, then Myanmar, Thailand and Laos, right? Apart from that, Thailand is also the central region of Thailand is a high potential and development of the rice. मतलब production of rice बहुत ज़्यादा होता है. Apart from that, it is also one of the largest producer of the natural rubber. So these are certain facts which you can talk about. Now there are certain other quick updates. So first is the terbium. So basically Indian Institute of Science has discovered and they have developed a glowing paper sensor to help the detection of the liver cancer. Basically, how you are going to detect the cancer, there are certain specific molecules. If you are detecting, then there may be the chances of in future there may be the development in the form of cancer. So in this particular case, this terbium, which is basically glowing in green color, that is acting as a biomarker for certain specific enzymes. So in this particular case, it is beta glucuronidase, right? So in this particular case, this particular enzyme. When it is detecting the presence of this enzyme, this is indicating that there may be potential development of cancer. So since terbium is a basically rare earth element. Now, rare earth element were lot in news with respect to Chinese export control policy. So China ने export control लगाया था with respect to lithium as a response to the American जो trade war चल रहा था, where the America was erecting a lot of trade barrier, right? So what China did, China also promoted certain kind of export control in order to prevent the trade of the rare earth element. ठीक है? So the properties क्या है? This is a rare earth metal, soft silvery metal. This shows its appearance silvery, white silvery is the color of this particular metal, right? The sources क्या है? So basically with respect to rare earth element, one such fact is they are not rare in the earth crust. But the availability is so scattered that the production, like the extraction from the minerals, let's say the monazite sand, or maybe from any other resources, is not that economical, or that is available in such a scattered manner that it is not very, very easy. That's why they are rare. That is not rare in the earth crust. So overall availability a lot, but the economic potential जो कि extraction में है वो comparatively कम होता है. That's why they are the rare earth elements, right? So the sources are monazite, then bastnaesites, then euxenite is also one such compound where you can see the terbium, right? Application now with respect to rare earth element, generally they are being utilized for the critical applications. Let's say some kind of sensor, certain kind of indication, certain kind of, let's say, the semiconductor related development, the technological development. So in this particular case, it is used to make the solid states device, X-rays, lamps, and for these particular purposes, this terbium is used. Next is the mud volcano. So general volcano से compare करें अगर, तो general volcano, how that volcanism is there. So basically there can be two different tectonic plates. There may be subduction of one beneath other, and then there may be magma coming out in the form of lava. So in the mud volcano, it is not the lava that is coming out. What is coming out basically and spreading on the earth is the mud or the slurry along with certain gases, right? So the functioning is somewhat similar. The extent is comparatively less, and yes, the magma or lava is not coming out of this. It is the mud slurry along with the water, mud, certain kind of gases, let's say methane, are coming. So when we talk about the availability in India, so in the Baratang Island of India, in the Andaman and Nicobar Island, there are mud volcanoes are present. Now formation कैसे होता है? Whenever there is subduction zone, one layer subducts under other, that puts pressure on the layer which is above, right? And the above layer is also putting some pressure. So basically there will be explosion of certain gases, and because of which certain kind of this accumulation of mud or slurry comes out along with water and certain gases, right? Now there may be both type of mud volcanoes. It can be man-made also, it can be natural also. Shape कैसा होता है? It is a kind of like conical mountain kind of structure हो सकता है. It can be even smaller, right? So man-made कैसे बनेगा? There may be certain kind of drilling which may be putting certain pressure or accumulating the gases, and that may be causing the mud volcano. Next is the captive non-public network. So what is captive? Basically they are limited to certain small geographical areas. Non-public network, that means they are being utilized for the private purposes. They are not available for the public, right? So what is being done? The Department of Telecommunication issued guidelines for the establishment of the captive non-public networks and launched a module, Saral Sanchar portal, for the identification of the captive non-public networks band. Basically they are the frequency on which certain organization, let's say organization X, if they want to communicate with each other, let's say employees, or they want to share the data, they want to share the information, and they do know that that particular information or data is sensitive, that should not go outside, right? So they are using this particular captive non-public network where they themselves within the organization can talk about, can share the data on that particular band, which is the captive non-public network band, right? So this is a terrestrial wireless communication network similar to the any other band, but which is not in public domain. It is for the captive use, means the small geographical areas related use. And significance क्या है? That you can utilize in the form of customized manner. मतलब you can utilize for the purpose for your own organizational purposes, that will be keeping your own control over the data that is being shared. Next is the certificate of deposit. So certificate of deposit is like any other monetary instrument. Generally क्या होता है कि when you are going to bank, let's say with certain amount of money, generally either you do in the savings account or let's say in the FD, but bank says कि we do have some certificate of deposit. What you should do, we'll give you this certificate of deposit. In return, obviously, we will be giving you certain extra money. So initially for getting that certificate of deposit, you are giving money to bank, let's say 10,000 rupees. And as it is a money market instrument, generally the time duration is 1 year tak. So roughly maximum 1 year duration is being kept. In exceptional cases for certain organization, it can be increased, but generally for the commercial bank, it is kept for 1 year maximum duration. Now, bank will be giving you the certificate of deposit after depositing that amount of money. Now, how they are being traded? They are traded at a discount rate. Let's say if that is of 10,000 rupees, bank will say ki right now give me only 9,000 rupees. I am giving you a certificate of deposit. Come to me after 1 year and then I'll give you this 10,000 rupees in exchange of that certificate of deposit. So initially you paid 9,000, you are getting 10,000, 1,000 rupees is a kind of interest that you are going to get on this. So it is issued at a discount value. Basically एक discount value, मतलब initially कुछ कम करके they are being provided. Now not necessarily every time this is being done, but generally this is being done at a discount rate. Now issued by the scheduled commercial banks, also except the regional rural banks and the local area banks, then some kind of like all India financial institutions permitted by RBI. Now money market instrument is so for short term financial availability, this instrument is being used. The guidelines are being issued by RBI. Next is the Quad Foreign Ministers meeting. So basically Quad is a regional group which is having the countries like India, then your Australia, then your Japan and United States. So basically after the tsunami, the conceptualization of Quad was done. Then 2007 में Japan के Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said कि there should be formalization of Quad, but at that point of time the countries were not interested. Then 2017 में after the Doklam Plateau incident, then India became more interested in active participating in the Quad, and since then comparatively 2.0 version of Quad was started. So since 2020-21 there were annual meetings that started being done, and then this particular foreign ministers meeting is one such in this particular series. Kahan hui? In the Washington, US. Now, what are the highlights? Certain kind of reaffirmation was provided. For example, free, open and rule-based Indo-Pacific, for which the Quad was actually formulated, right? Then a renewed agenda on maritime and transnational security, economic prosperity, then supply chain related things, let's say, if there are certain kind of events like piracy or let's say any other law and order issues in the seas, so in that particular case, this Quad is also going to provide responses to that. For emerging technologies, humanitarian assistance, emergency response, so in case of pirate attack or any other thing, these countries are cooperating. They are also doing the annual exercises also. Also condemned the all form of terrorism, even including the Pahalgam terrorist attack of April 2025, right? That was also being condemned in this particular meeting, and then supporting the regional framework. What are the regional framework? For example, ASEAN is there as a regional grouping. Then there are certain kind of other frameworks, like there is IORA, which is Indian Ocean Rim Association. Then there are the FIPIC and other kind of regional organizations are there, which are situated in the Pacific. So since this organization is providing the convergence of Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, so basically regional organizations and groupings functioning in this are being under this particular ambit, that they are providing the regional frameworks ko support through Quad. Next is Project 17A. So this is basically a project in order to develop the stealth frigate. Now what is frigate? Basically whenever any specific major ship is moving, in order to prevent that particular ship from any kind of attack from the combatant force or let's say non-combatant force, maybe the pirates attack. So there are frigates that are being used. So these are basically easy moving, small, and basically equipped with a lot of arms and ammunition, so they prevent any kind of attack on any major ship, right? So basically INS Udaygiri is the second ship of the Project 17A. First ship was INS Nilgiri, right? So it is a stealth frigate which was delivered to the Indian Navy. Now this particular project is simply have to be considered as a project which is for development of the stealth frigate, indigenous technology, indigenous arms and ammunition in order to ensure the maritime security. What it will be doing? It will be ensuring that whatever oceanic waters are there in surrounding India, India should be having ample presence and in control of that particular security architecture of that region, right? Now, Operation Melon. So basically, there is the Narcotics Control Bureau, which has basically busted a massive international drug racket on the dark net. So basically, Operation Melon was conducted by NCB. Who has conducted? NCB. Now, basically, what is darknet? So it is the hidden kind of network that cannot be generally accessed through the browsers that are available. So that can be accessed through the dark web. And in order to access the dark web, you need to utilize certain kind of specific browsers and specific operating system. Let's say Tor browser, the onion ring, which is being utilized by different kind of organization, organized crime group, terrorist organization in order to float, let's say, data, जो कि उन्होंने चोरी किया है from certain organization. Let's say there was a cyber attack on AIMS. The AIMS database से कुछ data compromise होता है. That particular data was sold on the dark web. So this is the kind of issue. Why the government agencies are comparatively lacking in order to control that? Because the data is not indexed. The kind of pages are not indexed. And in that particular case, it is difficult to track. Generally, when you see anything on the Google Chrome or let's say Mozilla, so basically in that particular case, there is indexing that is being done through which it can be tracked. But on the dark web and the dark net, it is very difficult to track. So in that particular context, Narcotics Control Bureau has busted this particular international drug racket. Now the recovery included the LSD blots, then ketamine is there, and then cryptocurrencies. So LSD and ketamine are basically the kind of hallucinating drug that are basically utilized in order to basically for certain kind of hallucination related things. Let's say changing certain kind of senses, right? So these are the harmful drugs that are being utilized. They have also discovered the Tails OS, which is the operating system, which can be utilized, that can be inserted in the form of USB in a system that will be overriding the existing operating system. And then basically that the local computer will not be able to track whatever you are doing, right? So regarding NCB, it was formed in 1986 under the Narcotics, Drug and the Psychotropic Substances Act of 1985. It is a nodal agency with respect to the drugs and other kind of substances related abuse control. Next is Solar Energy Corporation of India. So basically SECI has executed 60 gigawatt of power sale agreement. What is this power sale agreement? Basically in order to ensure that there should be utilization of the solar or any other power source, let's say wind power or any other power. What they are doing, they are selling the power. The excess power is sold to different regions. So power trade you can talk about, right? So 60 gigawatts ka power sale agreements have been signed by this particular SECI, which is the Solar Energy Corporation of India. So this was formed in 2011, implementing the National Solar Mission, basically in order to utilize the solar energy, and there apart from that, different other kind of renewable energy, right? So it is a Navratna, which is basically a prestigious public sector enterprise under the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. So ministry is important. It is also a designated renewable energy implementing agency. So basically this is also acting as an implementing agency, and then it is categorized as a category 1 power trading licensee. That means pan India level per this can trade the power. And this is one such agency which has been provided with the license of pan India trade. So it is a category 1 licensee, right? So basically it is doing what it is doing. It is doing the power trading from the excess region to the deficient region, and through which basically certain kind of monetary aspects are also involved, right? So with this, we have completed the today's News Today discussion. Right now, what you should do once you have watched this video, now go to this particular test related tab and then appear for this and try to assess yourself that how much you are aware with the current affairs that we had discussed. Okay? So I hope the things are clear to you. Thank you everyone. We'll meet again.